All right, class, it's about that time. Welcome to Wilderness Management, Forestry 470. It's a little hybrid, so hopefully the weather's nice indoors wherever you are. And today is, of course, first day class, so we're just going to go through the syllabus and mostly try to clear up the mass confusion about online and hybrid class format, stuff like that. What are we going to do about labs? What about field trips? Why are all foresters so devastatingly handsome? All of that stuff, like the pressing questions, we're going to cover those today. And hopefully we'll start getting into kind of by the end of the hour, some of the more content-oriented things, like the first couple of tasks we got for this semester. Because this class is hybrid and because some of you guys and gals are still like out working field work jobs and stuff like that, we've got one guy in Yellowstone right now, so that's probably worth talking about at some point. These Zoom sessions are optional but useful. So basically I'm just gonna do the class lectures this way or pre-record some of them and upload them. I've had some of you guys and gals with summer camp and Forestry 420 or earlier of the summer. The format will be similar to that, but since everybody is at least theoretically eventually mostly clustered around Carbondale, we can actually get together for some of those field trips and just kind of the hands-on lab exercises that we weren't able to do together for summer camp and 420 park management. So yeah, all right, let's go through the syllabus. If you want to follow along while we're doing this, instead of just listening to the dulcet tones of my voice, you can head to our course website, D2L, and I just uploaded these. So if you had this page open as of like an hour ago, maybe just refresh it. Head to the content section, which is the third section. There's your home, then course home with announcements and stuff. And then the content section is third. And the first sort of folder of content is called course info. And then we got two different versions of the same document in Word and PDF format. So I'm your instructor, Dr. Logan Park, and it is hard being this awesome. I'm just kidding. No, I'm pretty excited about being a forester at SIU. We have a nationally ranked program. We're amazing, and that's mainly because of you guys and gals. You go on to do great things. So my email address is logan.park@siu.edu. I've already gotten several emails from students today, mostly just asking about a lot of these questions we're going to tackle today, like what's the class format like? So email inbox is always open. I do get a lot of emails, so if you need to get a question answered right away, like, hey, Park, do we have class this afternoon? Probably don't send that to me in an email. Send it to me as a text message. And my direct cell phone line is 618-303-2799. And that goes straight to me and makes my watch vibrate and stuff like that. So I'll probably see that before emails and so forth. And when you send me a text message, especially if you haven't had any of my senior level classes before, let me know who you are so I can save you on my contacts list and I know who I'm talking to and how to answer the question. That helps. We'll do office hours virtually around the same time as classes for me this semester. So that's 1 to 4, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of on class days, Monday and Wednesday. It'll be the same format, mostly on Zoom, and I will occasionally be on campus, so just drop me a line if you want to meet that way. Socially distanced, but face-to-face. And that'll work fine either way. I don't mind. So whatever you particularly need to get your question answered, that's fine. When we are together, especially when we're in university vehicles, like going on the field trip, driving somewhere all cooped up in those university vans, we cannot socially distance without taking like 8 vans, and that's not going to be environmentally responsible for us to turn that many internal combustion engines with the size of our class. So we want to start thinking ahead to, at least for the vehicular portions of the class, making sure you got one or a couple of masks you can rotate through on that. And when we're out backpacking and stuff like that on the actual field trip, you don't need to be wearing a mask doing that. But just to allay your fears that you're going to get carbon dioxide poisoning while wearing a mask outside, as a young person who's probably not vaping too much, you're gonna be okay. I put a short video of me at the gym working hard, sweating to the oldies, and the short version of it is, if if you're wheezing out of shape, old professor can go 10-minute miles wearing a mask for an hour straight, 5 or 6 miles, then you can probably stand to wear a mask in a vehicle just to keep your classmates safe. We don't want to make any assumptions about anybody being immune compromised or not. That's private, privileged information, so we're not going to share that with each other. And we're just going to basically practice like we play. A lot of us are going to get summer jobs or jobs right out of class here after you graduate, being on a hotshot crew or something like that, or training up towards that goal. And you would wear personal protective equipment in that case. This is the same thing. Smoke is just very small particles. COVID-19, just very small particles. So same deal, and we'll just kind of get in that habit. And there's a link on the course syllabus with that short video. So the format of the class is going to be hybrid. We'll do kind of the boring lecture stuff like this in video format, so you can watch the video if you're a visual learner, or just listen to the audio of it if you're more an auditory person. We'll use the lab sessions on nice weather days and the field trip to practice more of the mind-body connection learning, the kinesthetic learning, so the sense of movement learning. We'll practice those together. So on weeks where we have a pretty decent stretch of nice looking weather, like this week for Wednesday, we'll plan on meeting for class together at Muckleroy Auditorium. That's Ag 102. It's just across the breezeway from the forestry wing. Several of you guys and gals have probably already had classes in there before. It's a big old space, and really all we're going to use that room for indoors is to gather. So please, stay separated. I think they got a bunch of the seats taped off and stuff. But we'll gather, and then we'll head somewhere on campus or somewhere real close to campus. It's only a 50-minute class session, so we can't, go super gonzo with it. But later on in the semester, as the weather gets a little bit nicer, we'll coordinate stuff like, where do we want to go backpacking in a wilderness as a class? In past years, that's been anywhere from Eastern Tennessee and the Smokies, right at the edge of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Daniel Boone National Forest, if you guys are into rock climbing, Red River Gorge has some awesome wildernesses and some world famous rock climbing, including Miguel's Pizza, which is not a climbing route, it's a place that climbers gather before they go, and so forth. So we can notch that on your water bottle, get that sticker. It's also meant we've gone west some years out to Missouri and found some wild spots out there. And some years we stay pretty close to home on the Shawnee, and we go backpacking through like Bald Knob Wilderness, Burden Falls, kind of wherever, over by Inspiration Point. And that works out real well as well. We have 6 or 7 federally designated wilderness areas within about a 1-hour radius of us, which that may be unique in the United States. We have an amazing federal wilderness situation right here, so it makes sense for us to use that a little bit. Okay, so that's the face-to-face part, and I will always let you know a day or two in advance, so you're not scrambling like that morning. I will only contact you about a face-to-face class this semester if I need to cancel it, like if the weather report changes overnight and we're definitely going to get like an electrical storm. It's not safe for us to be in the woods in that case. Lightning can travel literally hundreds of miles sideways from a storm before it hits the ground. There's an 800 or 900 mile lightning strike that stretched all the way across Brazil last year. It's a world record longest lightning bolt. So we just, we want to be careful about that. Because the one day we have class outside during an electrical storm is the one day when any SIU student gets hit by lightning. And I don't want that, because you are too pretty to die. All right. So yeah, asynchronous for all of our readings and class discussions and stuff like that. We'll do the actual discussions online in D2L. I don't know why I pointed off to the side like it's there, but that's the venue for those. So we're not breathing each other's air and particles. And face-to-face, again, with a day or two of notice. By email, I'll post on the announcement section on the front page of the course website. We'll have our plans for each lab session. The default assumption for meeting for those lab sessions and so forth is that we are not doing it unless I've posted to say that we are. So check it the day before or 2 days before, something like that, or the morning of, if that's your jam, and so forth. Okay. Any questions from you guys and gals who are in chat with us right now in Zoom about the class format? If you're wondering anything right now, probably some of your classmates are too, so might as well tackle that right now. If you're good to go, then great. If not, let's tackle that.
I was wondering how many people are in the class and will be in like labs and stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have about we have between 14 and 16 people registered. And so for things like any particular lab session, I'm expecting about a dozen to be able to arrive. Good question. Anything else? Excuse me. Okay, so let's actually get into what this class is about instead of its formatting, which is hopefully the more interesting part. From the catalog, our blurb for this class is Study of Current Management and Philosophy and Practice in America's Wilderness, Analysis of Current Wilderness Policy and its Historical Evolution, Discussion of the Evolution of Wilderness and its idea, and the individuals that have influenced it. The weekend field trip is required, so that's going to be like it's usually a 3-day field trip, which is kind of silly in the shortness direction. We'll get into this later in the class, but the whole idea of wilderness is that this is a place where you should be able to get lost on purpose in a safe way for up to a couple of weeks. That was part of the basic original definition of American federally designated wilderness, a 2-week pack trip. So that suggests some pretty big, pretty wild, trackless places without trails. But we probably can't carve out 2 weeks for this class separately from all the other stuff you got to do. So we'll just take a 3-day weekend for that. And that's typically in October or the kind of the first half of November. Before that, folks need kind of lead time to ask off from work. And after that, it's getting into Thanksgiving and extra cold weather, which not everybody's prepared for, and final exams. And so we don't want to clobber you guys with too much right at the end of the semester. So first assignment, take a look at your kind of long-term semester schedule, especially if you're working, and see what you might be able to do to carve out a 3-day weekend, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, typically, to head out to a wilderness area with us and actually kind of try the stuff on for size, right? So Thompson Woods is great for showing a lot of stuff, but it's hard to call us foresters if we're not getting out into some proper forests instead of sitting in front of screens all the time. So there's that. This class used to be offered alternate or even years, but there's enough demand for it that I started offering it every fall, so welcome. It is restricted to senior standing or graduate student. We have a couple of those in the class as well. There's a $80 field trip fee, mostly to cover gasoline and insurance for the trip. We'll coordinate with each other on stuff like backpacking gear and cooking gear and safety equipment and field measurement tools and trail building tools and all of that. So we'll cover all the rest. And I think that's all billed by the registrar like halfway through the semester, something like that, and so forth. So you got pretty much, I think, this week and next to figure out which classes you want to be in, and add drop and stuff like that, if you're on the bubble for that. And then following that, we're kind of committed and we're moving forward. We don't have a discrete textbook for this class except for what I post on D2L. I'm trying to keep the cost down for everybody, so I don't want us to all have to buy some $400 wilderness management textbook, because my experience has taught me that you learn a lot better by experiences than by reading textbooks about experiences. So we'll have some readings, and the textbook, it's got a really witty name. It's called Wilderness Management. It's in its second edition, and that's an older version. I believe it's in its third or fourth edition now, but provided the second edition for us. Not much has really changed since then in terms of what's in that book. The other textbook we have is a super old one. It's Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And this is kind of a weird read. It's a free book. It's like way, way, way out of copyright. It's written in the 1800s by this guy outside of Boston. And it's weird. It's cool when you sort of sink your teeth into it, but it's a little bit weird. So we'll read that together, or parts of it together as a class, and kind of dissect it. And that'll help us get into the mindset of wilderness, a little bit of the reasoning behind it, because when you look at it, a wilderness compartment, even at the federal or international level, is typically nested inside of a larger, like a national forest, like the Shawnee. The Shawnee has several wilderness areas. Crab Orchard, we've got regular forest management practices wrapped around these parcels that are smaller, but still typically pretty huge, that are managed very differently than the national forest parcels around it or encircling it. So Walden will help us kind of understand what people were thinking when they set this weird system up, and how we kind of justified it to ourselves as a nation, and how the rest of the world kind of looked on our efforts to do that and started putting in wilderness areas elsewhere. We kind of led the charge on this one. So that's our two sets of readings. And I'll also post a bunch of, much shorter, like scholarly articles, like research articles, popular press articles. There's a really good one that came out, I think, just yesterday or a couple of days ago by National Geographic about women firefighting, wildland firefighting crews in wilderness. Got some gorgeous glossy photos and stuff like that, just to kind of talk about the current state of things. So we'll go from the earliest conceptions of wilderness, like way back in like biblical history, like thousands of years ago, all the way up to current. And then we're also going to start the semester with where we think wildernesses are going, because we need to know kind of what we're aiming at before we can figure out how to get to what we're aiming at. And so we'll lead off with some climate change stuff later this week. But that's all in D12. And kind of on your own time. I'll post anytime I have content for you guys that I'm intending for us to kind of move through as a class. I'll post a link to that in the content section, so you don't have to go fishing for it. It'll be linked right on the front page in the announcements section, and so forth. Okay, so you should always be able to find everything that we're talking about, and it's not typically due like the day that it's assigned, maybe for the next class session or two. So try to stay within about a week of stuff getting posted. But it's all at your own speed. You don't have to do it when I'm staring at you through a webcam awkwardly. We are going to need some wilderness safety and survival equipment and clothing, and comfort and morale items are optional. So wilderness safety and survival stuff are things like a backpacking tent, a proper internal or external frame backpack, and I've got some cook kits, and I've got one or a couple of tents spare. I've got some spare clothing out of Lost and Found from the past several years that you're welcome to use if you don't have non-cotton clothing, head to toe from the skin out. We'll need that stuff to stay safe and comfortable out there. For our field exercises, definitely going to need a field notebook of some kind. You can probably get away with like any spiral notebook or what have you. If you are pretty serious about this stuff, may want to get a Write in the Rain notebook. If you are pretty serious about this stuff, but you're also legitimately strapped for cash, then let me know confidentially by email or something, or text message. I've got a couple of Write in the Rain notebooks kind of laying around the office, and I can pass you one of those. Definitely going to need closed-toed shoes or boots, so not like Keen sport sandals and so forth. Over the years, we found people wearing Crocs while backpacking and so forth. Always kick the broken stick, and it goes right through the opening ports on the Crocs or the Keens, and then it goes right through the quick, like underneath your toenails, and that really, really hurts and gets infected really, really fast, because your feet have the highest density of sweat pores on your body, and so it's like it's warm and it's moist and it's kind of smells like cheese, and it's a bad scene on the bottom of your feet. if you get a wound down there. So closed-toed like work boots, okay, hiking boots, proper. You can go down as light as trail runners, but that's about as light as we can take it. No sandals. All right. Definitely going to want long work pants and long sleeves that you can roll up if it's hot, or unbutton down to a skin layer, like a long johns layer underneath for temperature management if it gets hot and muggy. But those long sleeves will help you from sun exposure and from ticks. And we have, as we'll talk about with climate change, we have to wrestle with expanding tick habitats. So tick-borne illnesses that didn't used to be here in Southern Illinois are here now. And we are kind of exporting our tick-borne illnesses range, everything sort of expanding north and west from the American Southeast. Uh, you can see kind of the line move for detected cases year on year on animated maps that we'll take a look at. So you want to know what their habitat is, like open, sunny, grassy glades, and the perfect kinds of spots where it looks great to throw down your pack, have a Sammy before Pracky part two for hiking for the afternoon. That's a great place to pick up ticks. So we want to understand what they look like, their size, what the different species of ticks look like, what they carry. And not so much for a field trip, but for afterwards, we'll review what are some tick-borne illness symptoms. So what does Ehrlichia do to you versus Rocky Mountain spotted fever versus Lyme disease versus, and so forth. And kind of finishing off the insect section of the need to have for this class list, you're welcome to use whatever insect repellents or not at all that you want, but you need to understand the cost, its effective lifetime. 95% DEET works for 8 hours when you're sweating in a swamp. But your kids will probably have like 3 or 4 heads if you use 95% DEET because it's an industrial plastic solvent. And what is DNA but a plastic polymer? All right. Pyrethrins, like permanone-based stuff, is awesome. It's a contact nerve toxin for insects. It's not particularly dangerous to humans, but you use it in the opposite way that you do DEET. So DEET you put on your skin. Permethrin-based stuff, pyrethrins, you never ever put on your skin. You put it on your clothes and let the insect land on your clothes and then fall off and die of a heart attack instantly. Citronella is natural. It doesn't work nearly as well, some people find, but it might be a lot less harsh on you surviving without cancer later on. So we want to understand what these health risks are and just not be an idiot about it is the short version, okay? And this is a senior level class, so most all of you hopefully have taken and survived tree ID, and you understand what poison ivy and other urushiol, which is the urticating or the skin irritating component of poison ivy, what that looks like. Leaf on and leaf off. That's going to matter, definitely. And we'll talk about why poison ivy likes to colonize especially much at the edge of trails and campsites. That seems a little bit unfair, but it's actually a pretty good evolutionary strategy, okay? I grade this class like all my other classes. Grades are on the 10%, so 90% and up is an A. I'm happy to work with you on stuff like if you are aware that you're going to miss a class session or a lab session, something like that in advance because you're feeling ill with COVID-19 and you need to stay home in that case. Or you have a work trip or something like that, that's fine. That's not going to spike you in this class. Just let me know beforehand. We'll work something out. That's usually not a problem. We'll assess the on-site skills dev, trail building, site surveying, wilderness management, field stuff through our lab sessions. So I'll be just kind of helping you out and hoping that everybody gets across the finish line on those. And then comprehension is, you know, show me what you're thinking and how well you're thinking it with participating on the discussion forums and stuff like that. So I'll try to give you guys as much of a telegraphed hint on get into the discussion forums, participate, ask questions about stuff that you're not familiar with. I'm not going to mark you off for asking good questions, certainly. and so forth. So it's just like all of the things. Um, I don't typically do a lot of quizzes in my courses, but with an online class, that's a little bit easier. So if that is all right with you guys, we'll do a couple of those throughout the semester. Um, and if it's all right, I'll make those so that you can take them as many times as you need to, and also not typically with a strict short time limit, um, because that's not typically how real life works. Like there's, when you've got a forest fire, you don't have somebody holding a stopwatch over your shoulder, like breathing down your neck, asking you trivia questions. You get to use chop and change tactics. You can update your understanding of the situation as the situation unfolds. So if that's okay, we'll do it that way. If you have any individualized learning needs with respect to things like quizzes, like if you're the student that works with DSS to get extra time, or a note taker for class, or um, alternate test formats, any of that stuff, that's fine. I'm 100% happy to like help you out with that, but it's all got to go through DSS first. It's not fair to everybody for me to sort of move things around for somebody who's not doing it through the official channels. To keep it fair, DSS coordinates all of that stuff, and they mobilize a ton of resources for you. Like if you are hard of hearing, they can caption all of these videos like word for word. So if that's a learning tool that you need to be successful, that's fine. I'm happy to work with that. No big deal. I do it every semester for most every class. But they got to know that you need that, and that's fine. No judgment. It's all confidential. So just contact DSS. And I think I got the link towards the end of the document here. Our typical assignments are going to be readings and going through a couple of PowerPoint lectures, mainly kind of front loaded on the PowerPoint lectures, because some of the stuff like climate change, like it doesn't care about our hopes and dreams or our fee-fees. So there's just some technical information to get across with that. Like what are some of these climatological processes that force forest dynamics and destabilize some things and change things for us? So I'll try to demystify that as well as I can. And if anything is not real clear, just let me know, either in the discussion sessions, or just shoot me a text message, whatever. I'm not going to be offended. I need that feedback to understand where people are doing well or where people are struggling, especially this semester since we're remote. On-site and off-site skills, that'll be skills practice stuff with GPSs and laser scanners and paper and pencil forms and tape measures and spade shovels and all sorts of stuff. So, if you've been doing trail work at Touch Nature all summer long, you probably know a few of these things, but I'll also try to get into why. Like what are some of the soil physics of trail erosion and how do we combat that? One thing that you want to do, at least start thinking about pretty early, is identify a wilderness management professional of any stripe. Their job title can be anything at all. It could be somebody working for a private company, even an individual private landowner, in some cases, are wilderness managers. Or it could be like the more traditionally recognizable wilderness ranger or backcountry ranger, as they're titled sometimes federally. Want to identify that person, and if you're thinking about putting your degree to work and being a forestry person after class is over, I want you to definitely ask about a place where you're thinking about working someday. Like we have one student in Yellowstone this semester right now. If you think you might want to work at Yellowstone, see if you can dig up contact information for one of the wilderness rangers. We have a gazillion Saluki Forestry alums working in wilderness in various capacities all over the place. I mean, literally all over the world, but especially all across the United States, and in particular out west, of course. So shouldn't be too hard to find. And basically, we're just gonna have a short kind of interview with that person to take the sting out of thinking about, okay, so how do I make those dollar bills, those precious Benjamins, and get paid in pretty sunsets as well, doing wilderness management stuff using my forestry degree. Um, those are all questions that that wilderness manager and whatever actual job title they have, those are all questions that that person has had to answer and answered them and then successfully got the job, right? So we want to use this process of surrogation, that is learning from other people's wins as well as their fails, and see what that opens up for you. Okay, and I think you'll find that most folks are pretty excited to meet you and talk to you. They were all students at one point and we're doing the same kinds of questions. All right. Next section of the syllabus is the field trips. So they are inescapably important for this class. We got to get out there. And we'll try and schedule it as early as we can. Obviously, with coronavirus, we're looking at jumping right into our second wave as a country as everybody goes back to school. It is what it is. That's why we're doing all this hybrid stuff. But what that means for us in this class with respect to the field trip is that a lot of national parks and forests and so forth, they closed down too back in March and April, and then started kind of reopening one by one as they got their, cleaning and sterilization protocols and their public safety kind of dialed back in, and they figured out the new normal. It's possible, not automatically likely, but it's possible that they may have to shut down again if wave 2 gets real bad. And we're kind of right on the doorstep of wave 2, so we'll see. And we'll have to play it by ear a little bit, but we'll plan out as early as we can when everybody is available for that. And we'll select the site and go from there. If you have any kind of a health concern or mobility concern, if you are required to take some kind of a medication that requires refrigeration, for example, or anything else that might be an extra consideration for your health and safety, but also for your comfortability and your ability to just be present on the trip and have your senses wide open and learning all that you can passively and actively, let me know. That's okay. Not a big deal. Plan for those, just like with, learning style needs with DSS every semester, every field trip. So let me know. I don't count that against you. That would be pretty horrible if I did. So as long as you let me know beforehand and I have a little bit of lead time to work on the logistics of it, we will move heaven and earth to get you on that field trip safely, having a good time, and making some great memories too. Happy to work with you. All right, so that's that. If let me stop right here. Do we have any questions from Zoom on course materials, assignments, field trip, how this class is graded? Any questions on that section before we get into the content? Elise.
I have one. How soon do we need to have stuff like the frame backpack and like tent and that sort of stuff, do you think?
Okay, so you don't need to have that until kind of the morning of the field trip, but this is just kind of early notice to start, borrowing that stuff. If you don't have it, that's fine. A bunch of your classmates do, and don't be shy asking. Borrow stuff from family. This is hopefully enough time to, head home for like fall break or something, pick it up, and then we go on the field trip after that to save shipping costs. If you are, at all feeling pretty serious about working in the field as like a backcountry ranger, for example, then assembling some of this gear is a pretty good idea in terms of buying it instead of borrowing it from folks or renting it from base camp in the student rec center for pretty cheap, because you're gonna end up using that for a long time. I've used the same backpack for work purposes, for summer camp and all of these field trips for about a decade, and it's looking a little frayed around the edges, but it's still perfectly serviceable, still very safe. I check it over each time. It's doing fine. So does that answer your question? Cool. Yeah, plenty of time to start assembling that stuff, and I'll post a gear list for that. So if this is a first time exercise for you, you can kind of run through that, and it's the big Indian gear list. It's like all the stuff you could possibly even think about taking. and then you actually end up taking just a subset of that. A lot of it is like optional comfort items, like what is your favorite dry hard candy for when it's inevitably raining for 3 days straight and we need a little morale boost. Werther's Original, really good for that. Just saying. Other questions about the pre-content sections of the syllabus?
As far as gear goes, what are your thoughts on using a bivy?
Yeah, totally fine. That works.
Yeah, cool. Right on.
Yeah. Bivy, tarp tent, single wall or double wall backpacking tent, freestanding, non-freestanding. Backpacking hammock is a perennial option. Just a straight up tarp by itself. You can cowboy camp, but for safety reasons, I gotta have some kind of shelter for everybody just in case. So cowboy camping, for those of you not familiar, is just sleeping under the stars. Like we did for 100,000 years. Okay, so yeah, any and all shelter goes. On summer camp, they cannot be non-freestanding tents. That's a double negative, but freestanding tents will stay up without being staked down. Non-freestanding tents will fall over if they don't have stakes in. On summer camp, we go to some places out east and out west where there's no soil to stake into and there are no trees to tie off to. So that doesn't work. But where our radius is about 6 hours one way for this class, that's our fuel range. And pretty much everywhere within that radius has soil and has some trees to tie off to. So a non-freestanding tent, which tends to be a little bit cheaper and a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter than a freestanding tent, those are an option for this class instead of for summer camp. So that's kind of the only difference there. Good question. Others for this section? Moving right along. All right, so our topic structure is that's pretty short. It's like half a page. We'll start off with climate change because that's probably one of the most technically challenging sections of the class that we get into. A lot of the philosophy is just a bunch of like lofty sounding ideals like self-determination and we need places to play in and pray in, courtesy of John Muir out in the Sierras, climbing trees in the middle of lightning storms because that's his particular life way, or it was. He's dead now. And yeah, the philosophy stuff is pretty straightforward. That's a lot of textbook type stuff. But the climate change stuff in forestry, I find so far that we haven't typically had our students exposed to that a whole lot yet. So that's a question for you guys here in Zoom. Have you had any classes on climate change, on planetary weather dynamics, climate forcing and destabilization? Is this stuff like you've kind of heard about here and there, but you never really dug into it?
Yeah, I haven't really learned much about it.
Okay, Taryn, gotcha.
I've learned a bit, but that's just through some of my environmental classes that aren't forestry. But
okay, right on. And Jack and Bailey, feel free to chime in on this as well. We have probably a couple of weeks worth of stuff to talk through on that, and it's the kind of thing where you can't really talk about any particular factor of climate change without talking about all the other factors of climate change. So we'll just try to sort of piece it all together, small to big picture as well as big picture to small. We'll do my best on that. And again, if you have any questions or unclarity as we're moving through that, by all means ask right away. Also, I'm aware that at least in the United States, for whatever reason, climate change has become a political topic, as well as just a bunch of physics that don't really have personalities or political leanings. They just, it's like a storm, like it doesn't care. It just honey badgers its way through Iowa and destroys 1/3 of the entire state's corn crop, for example, like last week, if you guys are familiar with that derecho that just happened. So we'll talk about this stuff from a bunch of different perspectives. And if you have any questions coming from a place of, I'm not real sure what to trust about this stuff or how to evaluate some of these things that I'm hearing about climate change. We'll wrestle with that as well, because as much as I don't want it to be, this has become a bit of a political topic. So um, we'll kind of leave the politics aside, but we'll parse out what people are talking about these days. So that'll be a couple of those pop articles, and even things like short video clips that people have captured and posted online of different weather and climate events and so forth. So that'll be our first probably couple of weeks, and then kind of simultaneously and towards the tail end of the climate stuff, we'll move into that like philosophy and history section. In our asynchronous part of the class, this hybrid and this online stuff, that'll be the philosophy part. And then the practice stuff will be starting this Wednesday, where we'll meet at Muckroy Ag 102 across the breezeway from our big classroom 166. And it's that big auditorium. It used to be the bull test or showroom where they'd march cattle through McElroy Auditorium when it had a dirt floor. True story. And then we'll head outside to someplace and like put our hands on some tools and practice some wilderness tool work, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, the practice will be kind of straight through the semester, all throughout, kind of whenever the weather lets us get together and work on stuff. Okay. All right. Frequently asked questions. Oh, and the other piece of content that will also we'll kind of smatter it all throughout, because it's sort of a target of opportunity thing as job postings show up, especially in the second half of our semester. So we want to be prepped by then. But especially in the second half of our semester, we're going to start seeing job postings for all kinds of state and federal forestry positions, including a ton of wilderness ones. Literally thousands of just wilderness within forestry openings at the federal level. And so by that second half of the semester, hopefully we've got enough time to kind of run through a couple of case studies, example career fields and stuff like that. So that's just one of those folders in the content section of our website. I've got some example like career arcs for you. U.S. Forest Service wilderness boss position. That sounds pretty good. 2016 Region 4 fire hire. There's a lot of wilderness in Region 4 of the Forest Service. So working in fire is working in wilderness. There's a great podcast the other year of a backcountry trail crew. Like their job is to just walk a bunch of trails and carry tools with them and perform some visitor contact sometimes when they run across like individual or groups of folks backpacking, but to keep those trails open and maintained, but maintained to a very specific and so-called low standard. These can't be super nice trails, which is weird, because wilderness, it's got to be wild, right? And we'll talk about this ethical and philosophical quandary with that of we can make a trail perfectly glassy smooth. We can polish concrete. We can eat off of a trail like that after we sterilize it. But that's not a wilderness trail. So we intentionally do worse. We make it a little bit rugged and rocky and rooty, so-called toothy trails or low standard trails. And that's a real trade-off. That's on purpose. But it's a real trade-off because, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, all new built facilities and trails and campsites, outhouses, backcountry privies, those are all built facilities. There's supposed to be some provenance for everything being like wheelchair accessible, handicap accessible, right? Think about the design of buildings and sidewalks and all of that stuff. What do we do about trails? But how do we also provide wild or difficult trails that avoid the so-called mountains with handrails problem, where we civilize the wildness of nature too much and we become soft and dainty and weak because there's nothing wild left anymore. We'll wrestle with all that stuff. Don't worry about it. So that's that. Any questions about our topic structure? Stuff we're talking about. We have a little bit of room this semester. We can also add in some like current events as they crop up during the semester. 2 years ago, 2018, we had crazy wildfires out east, like burning through Gatlinburg and stuff like that. and it ended up re-aiming our field trip not to there because like the trail we wanted to camp along was burned over completely. So yeah, we'll adjust stuff as we go a little bit if we need to. But any questions about topics and so forth? All right, cool. Frequently asked questions. Where can I get free masks? There's a bunch of spots on campus. If you are not able to find any in stores, masks in places like Walgreens, so convenience style stores, are super expensive. It's like 35, 40 bucks for a pack of 50 of them. So the university is getting folks, I think they're handing out like one free cloth mask per person. And they have like SIU branded. Like we're going to be pretty styling if you use those. You can make your own masks. You can buy them for like $6, $7 from a place like the Co-op. Those are handmade cloth masks and they are sustainably sourced. You can call up your mom or dad or aunt or uncle or whoever likes crocheting. Not crocheting, maybe like actual sewing. Crocheting would be the wrong solution for this. But yeah, you need some kind of a mask for this class and for all your other classes where they're meeting in person. Final exam period has been announced, but they change it between now and the end of the semester about half of the time. So the registrar's website, registrar.siu.edu, is the right solution for that, to check up on that. Our exam will be during exam week, and if you haven't heard it yet, I believe the university-wide plan is that after Thanksgiving, the last couple of weeks of the semester are entirely online no matter what. So that'll include our exam. Our exam in the past has been lots of different formats. Like Jeopardy style quiz shows, Family Feud. We've done like everybody writes a management report or a management plan for a wilderness area, real or hypothetical, what have you. So as we get a little bit closer to the final exam, think about what kind of a format you can be very successful with. The point of the final exam is not to be a burden to you. It's ideally a chance for you to show everything that you've learned throughout the semester. It's called summative evaluation. We'll catch a bunch of formative evaluation along the way, but if a game format or a written, like a traditional multiple choice final exam, or a scenario simulation, a case study, management plan, whatever, think about that, that set of different options, and we'll discuss that as a class and arrive to a consensus, usually closer to about halfway through the semester. Next question, I'm trying to get a job / start a career related to this class. Would you please write me a letter of recommendation? Yeah, probably, especially towards the end of class as those federal website applications start coming up. We wrestled with this a little bit on summer camp already, so I know some folks are already working on their federal job applications and so forth, but we'll pick that up again for this semester. And I'm realizing that I never put the template federal resume document online for my summer campers, so I'm super embarrassed about that right now on live TV. Whatever, get back on script. Next question, I'm a graduate student. Is this class any different for me? Yeah, it is. If you're a graduate student, awesome, you're welcome. We typically have graduate students in forestry, geography, and recreation taking this class, each with their own kind of perspectives and previous experiences and knowledge bases and professional certifications and so forth. So if you're a graduate student, and especially if you are a graduate student and you're working on a research project, contact me outside of this Zoom meeting, like send me an email or a text message, and let me know what your research project is so that we can work this class into that. My goal is not to make any extra work for you as a grad student. It is to make this class work kind of double time for your research project and this class, if that makes sense. So kind of making you twice as efficient, hopefully in that way. But I got to know what your project is and what your timeline is and stuff like that in order to help you in that way. So let me know. And if you're just starting as a graduate student, that's fine. That's actually pretty normal since this is a fall semester class. So you may not have full details on what your research project is. We'll get there. I have to miss a class session. Well, this semester it's all asynchronous, so whatever. I won't even know if you miss like one of these Zoom meetings. No big deal. But if you have to miss one of our field sessions, like I was saying before, just let me know in advance. We'll work around it. We will get you all set up. But if you are missing a bunch of class sessions, you know, for legitimate reasons or whatever, and you're not communicating with me about it, then I don't know what's going on, and it's much harder for me to help you. And I want to help you. That's my job. So just a reiteration around individualized learning needs with disability services. So if you are dyslexic or an ADHD or non-neurotypical, or you are hard of hearing, or you have some mobility restrictions or whatever, that's fine. You do you. It's not a big deal. That doesn't really affect your performance or success in this class, especially and as long as you are working with DSS to sort of get what you need out of this class, okay? Tuition is expensive. Make sure you're getting your money's worth, and DSS is one great way to do that. Proofread your stuff. This is a senior level class, and with grad students, I really shouldn't be wading through typos and stuff like that. So if you grew up relying on the grammar check of Microsoft Word or iOS or Android, that may not be good enough for this class. You want to actually like look through your stuff and make sure that you are representing your intelligence well. Part of this class's goals, kind of behind the scenes, is to prep you for being a professional in these fields, and written communication is part of that. So since this class is hybrid, everybody's going to be turning in typed work, except for your field notebooks and so forth. Do not plagiarize. It is super depressing and discouraging for me as a professor to ever have to drop the hammer on somebody who's like pulling copy pastas out of Wikipedia. Like, it's obvious often when that happens. And I really, really don't like being the jerk, but the rule of thumb there is to flunk you for the class, like straight up. So, you know, represent your own knowledge, cite your sources, and this is very rarely a problem. Okay, all of the rest, the second half of this document, the syllabus, is all just boilerplate stuff. So go on through that, and we're about out of time. So read through that at your leisure, and that's a bunch of resources for you. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff to come on through. Make sure you're safe. Any last second questions? Otherwise, I will stop the recording, upload this, and start uploading pointers for people to understand what is first in terms of assignments. All right. Despite the distance, I'm super excited about this class. I love this class, and I'm super excited about a bunch of the people in this class. I know most of you. I'm really glad to have you here, so this is going to be great. And we'll get through the Zoom stuff. We'll get on to the fun stuff, the in-person stuff. All right, cool. We'll see you guys and gals around, and I'm available by text message or email if you need anything. In the meantime, I will see you on campus Wednesday, okay? Cool, McElroy Auditorium. See you then. Bye.